The MacVoices update for January 2025. This is MacVoices. Welcome to MacVoices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, this is the January 2025 MacVoices update. It seems like only a few days ago that I recorded the December 2024 update because January has just flown by. It's been a very active month. A week in Las Vegas for CES, and then, of course, returning and continuing to produce our regular MacVoices content along with all of the CES content. We're partway through the CES content, and so that's what's primarily on my mind and probably primarily on yours as well. There's plenty of happening in the larger tech world, especially regarding Apple. But we're trying to mix it up a little bit this year, and instead of just dropping everything in favor of the CES content, we're trying to keep up with the regular stuff and intermix it a little bit so that we don't get too far behind. So that's the first thing. The second thing I want to bring up this time around is that every year when I start releasing the CES interviews, I get a lot of the same questions. Not all the same, but some of the same. So with the new website design, I now have a place to answer some of those questions, and I have a blog post in there about how I approach CES. And I'll have a link to that blog post in the show notes, but you can also obviously go to the blog and find it. It's pretty easy to find. More importantly, though, I'll answer just a couple of the questions here, and also some questions that have come in since I wrote that are not answered in that post. So the first thing that every time we go to CES, the vendors want to know, well, when can I see this? Where can I see this? And we have to tell them, look, we're here gathering content and creating the content. And it will be released once we get home and edit it so it is a little more appealing and a little more understandable, and do some of the audio improvements and some of the video improvements. But there's also this little matter of sleep, because we really focus on being present at CES. Instead of taking time out to release a few shows, it's better just to record everything, then come home and push them out in a more controlled fashion. And frankly, I've never completely understood the huge press for CES coverage, simply because it's just so much coming at you from every single angle that it's hard to digest it all. The way we do it, we release it a little bit at a time so that you have a chance to pay a little bit more attention to each item, because you can think of MacVoices as curating it for you. And we don't go to the big booths. Very seldom, I should say, do we go to the big booths, because realistically, that's where a lot of the other outlets are going to go. They're going to go to the big booths and not really focus on some of the smaller things or the more specialized or specific things that we do here on MacVoices. So that's the kind of the first thing. The second thing is, why do we do it the way we do it? Why don't we do more in-depth interviews at CES? And that's pretty simple, because the bulk of our interviews are recorded either at press events or on the show floor. And neither one of those lend themselves to an in-depth conversation. If we want to do that, we can have a guest come back on a regular MacVoices and talk about their product. The idea that we want to convey to you is what it would be like if you came to CES and were walking around, again, in a curated fashion, and stopping by the booths or the tables to talk to the vendors, get the elevator pitch, ask a few questions, and then move on, both for the benefit of the vendors who need to see other people, but also for your benefit so that you can see more people, more vendors. So that's the approach. Other operations do it differently. I like to have the vendor tell you about their product. Sure, they could hand it to me, tell me what to say, and I could say it. And that's fine. That's a fine approach, but it's just not mine. I'd rather talk to them, because I think it gives you an idea, first of all, of the amazing diversity and the amazing talent of these people that contribute to our technology world. So that's why we do that. The next thing is, well, are you picking your favorites first? Do you pick your favorites last? And we stopped trying to pick favorites long ago. simply because there's just no way to do it and do it fairly. So what you see as the shows get released are pretty much the order that they were shot in. So that's why you see the interviews from CES Unveiled first. Then you see the PepCom interviews, because those are the first two big events, the press events. Then we move to the show floor for the first day. At the end of the first day, we go to Showstoppers Tuesday nights, or whatever night that is, the first night of the actual show floor, and then finish up Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday with interviews from there. So that's why you'll see the notes on the title pages changing just a little bit, but everything is done in order. It's the fairest way I can think of, and I want to stress to everybody out there, vendors and audience alike, that I don't like to play favorites. If it wasn't an interview that I thought was worth getting, I wouldn't have stopped. And if it's an interview that really didn't turn out great, I'm not going to waste your time with it. That very, very seldom happens. I think this year, so far, we have not lost any interviews. Last year, we lost one because of a technical issue. So once in a while, that happens, and I try to get clean up later by having somebody back to come back to the regular MacVoices and talk about their products. So those are the big, the big things that I want to make sure you understand, that just because we're releasing shows next week and even the next week, that doesn't mean that they're any less worthy of your attention or they're any less interesting. It just happened to be the way that either we came upon them or we visited the hall that they were in the case of the show floor, or that they were at a given press event, and that's when we could get in front of them. So that's kind of the logic there. I also want to make sure that I give a huge thank you to Norbert Frossa, who was manning the camera again this year. I can't get Norbert in front of the camera, but Norbert hangs out behind. So once in a while, you might see part of a head or part of a hand, or maybe a little bit more. But most of the time, Norbert's back there trying to make sure that you are getting the best possible images and doing some supplementary photography, and just in general keeping me straight, which is no small feat in Vegas. So, Norbert, thank you so much for everything you do for MacVoices. It is greatly, greatly appreciated. And I hope that someone will look you up and send you a couple emails to say thank you, because it really, really is a team effort when it comes to that. Other than that, MacVoices Live is back on a pretty regular schedule. We did have a hiatus week. In fact, we had a couple there in a row because I had some work commitments as well as Vegas. So that's stabilized now, so everything is back on track. I have a host of people that I want to interview and invite to MacVoices. I'm going to try to hold off on those just a little longer to make sure that we get all the CES interviews out in something like a timely fashion without rushing them and dumping them all on you at once. So that's what's going on in January. Along, of course, with the fact that we have had a couple sponsors in January, but so far the rest of the first quarter is looking kind of thin. So if you know a vendor, or you are a vendor who would like to sponsor MacVoices, I'd love to have you. You can contact me directly, chuck@macvoices.com, or just go directly to backbeatmedia.com. They're the ones that handle the advertising. And of course, our patrons are really the ones that keep us going. So I want to say thank you to all our patrons before we get to the support report. We really, really appreciate you being there every month and helping us keep paying the bills, because there are bills associated with MacVoices. So with that, let's take this month's support report, and then we'll get out of here. First up, this month at Platinum, we had Marty J. At Gold, we had Webb B., David G., Robert G., Tim G., Keith M. At Silver, we had Baz, Cletus H., Craig A., Eric B., Fallen C., Brett C., Bruce E., John E., Barry M., Chuck P., George R., Andrea S., and Daniel S. At Bronze, we had Brian F., Ronald F., Craig H., Clinton M., John M., Patrick N., and Prop P. So once again, a huge thank you to our Patreon supporters. We couldn't do it without you, whether you've been here for a few months or a few years. It's always appreciated. It's always appreciated for the folks who aren't patrons, who will support MacVoices in other ways, like buying through our affiliate links, visiting our sponsors, sharing our content on social media, recommending it to a friend. All of that helps grow the MacVoices audience and gives us a wider reach. And I really, really appreciate every single one of those acts of support that you do. A couple other things I just want to throw in at the very end. If you, depending on which podcatcher you have, it is possible that you're not seeing all our shows because we're publishing several times a day. And if your podcatcher is not set to collect all the shows that we publish, it's conceivable that you could miss something. That's something I can't control at all. It's strictly based on the podcatcher and the settings you have on that software. So if you're not sure, you can always visit our YouTube channel where everything is at youtube.com/MacVoicesTV. We also have a Vimeo channel, vimeo.com/MacVoices, where, again, everything is also published there, and we publish it directly to YouTube as well. And, of course, if you follow me on social media of any persuasion, that's where we announce everything, and the links are always there as well. So you should not have any trouble finding either our CES content or any of our regular MacVoices content. With that, I'm Chuck Joyner. I'll be back next month with another update, but I will see you in the feeds very, very soon. As always, thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our Facebook group or like our Facebook page, and get more out of your Apple tech with MacVoices Magazine, free on Flipboard and on the web. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us through either our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MacVoices or by making a one-time donation via the PayPal link on our front page and in the show notes of each episode. You will join these fine people who help bring you MacVoices. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.